right, I'm Josh.
I'm Riki.
And welcome to the briefing room. So today we've got a brilliant agent out of Keller Williams South Shore. He's actually the team lead for the South Shore Homeowners Realty Group. And so without further ado, I want to bring Ben on. He's been through so many different walks of life, had so many different journeys, has been regarded to be very similar to Zach Galifianakis. Where that came from, I don't know. But I'll let you take that one. But Ben, how are you?
I'm doing great. I cannot express to you how thrilled I am to be here. And frankly, the words escape me to adequately describe the scene. They should have sent a poet in my place.
That's so true. So obviously we're going through a lot of kind of crazy turmoil times right now. We were getting to kind of chat about it before the show started. And so we're definitely going to roll through that. We're going to talk about, maybe get to some conspiracies and just kind of have fun with this episode. It's going to be very unscripted and keep you on the spot. What do you think?
Sure.
Cool with it? So tell us a little about where you started. So I know you were Army guy, went cop, went realtor, and I want to hear the story behind that.
Yeah, so I was in the military. I didn't really have the means to go to college traditionally, so that was one option. I went into the Army in the year 2000. I was in communications. I was in during 9/11. I deployed a couple times to the Middle East, to the war in Iraq. And, I'm thankful for that time. It feels like many moons ago, but I am still in almost daily contact with at least, someone from that era. Mm-hmm. And, I'm thankful for the experience. It's kind of made me what I am and helped develop a personal philosophy along with some other things. Over time, I got out. I actually was working for the cable company right when I got out of the military. I happened to help a Hillsborough County SWAT deputy with a problem he was having with his internet, and he, kind of encouraged me to apply. I was asking some questions about law enforcement. He's like, well, if you're interested, you should go ahead and apply. So I did, and I ended up working in the jail at Hillsborough County for a couple of years, and then I went onto the streets in St. Petersburg. I'm very thankful for that experience. It served its purpose for that period of my life. The people I met during that period are very instrumental in sort of the development, of where I'm at right now. And I'm thankful for it. Not every day was great. There were a lot of terrible days, but there were a lot of great stories. There were, great relationships. And I think that you have to go through a process, of growth to figure out where you're supposed to be and where you're going to end up, and if you're in the right spot.
Absolutely.
So.
And Riki and I have a similar background. We were both military veterans as well. And so, mm-hmm. and Riki actually was a law enforcement officer as well. Worked with the police.
I did campus police department. So a little bit different, but we still got to see some pretty fun stuff.
He got to see all the wild ragers on the weekends. But what I want to do is really help us kind of talk to maybe some of our first line defenders who are maybe wanting to transition into real estate, or maybe some of our military members who are getting out. What are some of the things that the military or that the police taught you that you still utilize today that gives you kind of a leg up on everybody else?
Well, one, especially times like this, a feeling of stoicism. If you're familiar with Stoic philosophy, it's basically, a philosophy that on mental toughness is my interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, not as serious as what can, if something goes wrong in the military or in law enforcement, but a lot of things can go wrong in a real estate transaction. And, everybody involved, the client, the other agent, the title company, the lender, they all are looking for somebody to be the rock, somebody to hold it all together.
Sure.
And the stoicism that you demonstrate and how well you can, maintain your professionalism, maintain that, basically be the rock of the transaction and keep it all together, will determine your value. And I think that that's been over time. I mean, filling out real estate contracts isn't that hard. A certain number of transactions are going to come to you if enough people know that you're in real estate through like your friends in your sphere. But over time, it becomes much less about the actual transaction, like the number of transactions. My value add and what I feel like I bring to a transaction is that if something does go wrong, I feel like I'm getting better and better at keeping it together.
Sure.
And that's, of course, I benefit from that because I get paid at closing. However, that client who needs to sell their home, they also benefit from it because they need to sell their home. And each transaction is a learning experience. Every time something goes wrong, you get a little bit sharper, you get a little bit better so that when it happens again or something not quite so crazy happens again, you have that perspective and you can really be the guide. People need a guide. They want a guide. Otherwise they'd be selling their homes themselves.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, no matter what it is, whenever something's going on, chaos, somebody always looks for that one person to be the leader, right? That one person to take charge and guide everybody out of that situation. So, I think military, that's a tremendous one that allows you to basically instill and learn how to remain calm in a chaotic situation, right? So I think certain events that occur throughout a real estate transaction, it might not be as chaotic as you would experience in the military. However, it allows you to still maintain that level head and not panic about it and just figure out, hey, how are we going to get through this and what do we need to do to get this done?
What's the solution?
Yeah, I heard it recently described like, I was born in chaos. I was raised up in chaos, so this feels like home.
Exactly. Yep.
I feel right at home.
Yep, it's normal.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's important. And so for those of our listeners that are, wondering what the next step looks like for them, or if they're looking to transition, and they're coming from the military, they're coming from the police force, real estate is not a bad place to start looking. You've got a great network. And so talk to us a little bit about, so you came out of the cops, you came into being a real estate agent. Where did you start? Because I thought I remember you being with Caldwell, weren't you?
Well, if you don't mind, if we could just back up just a tad bit.
Sure.
What made you decide to go into real estate?
That's a good question.
So I was working in St. Petersburg. I just took a screenshot for my social media. Sorry. I'll have to post that in a second. So I was working in West St. Pete. If you're familiar with St. Pete, the 66th Street, like Central Avenue area, I would consider my home base to be that Starbucks that's there, because we were there every night. And my zone partner at the time, we worked the same area, so we would get sent, either to be the primary officer or the backup officer on whatever call, and then in between calls we'd go park and shoot the breeze, type our reports and all that. Well, his wife is actually a real estate broker. She's not in what I would consider like traditional residential real estate. She's Chinese and actually works with a lot of Chinese investors to buy properties and park money in real estate investments and coordinates to find renters for them and property management stuff. So not really the sphere that I'm in, but he had also been in commercial real estate before he got into law enforcement. So we would go clear these alarms and, at vacant homes and, homes that were for sale. And I'd see the yard sign. And one night I asked him, what could you make if you sold one of these homes? And, and he told me, and of course this is before the time where I understood like splits and, taxes and everything. But he gave me a gross commission amount that was enough to make me want to grab my iPad that I had in the cruiser and sign up for the Bob Hogue School of Real Estate. And, in between calls over the next few months, I was, going through the process of getting my real estate license, and not just at work, obviously, but, the course and the barrier to entry in real estate's so low that it was like, this is just interesting. I honestly had no intention of leaving the police world even after I started selling homes. I mean, my first year in real estate, I was with Coldwell Banker, and I made about 1.5 times my police income. still to that day, I had never intended to leave even to that point, because it was, I think that I saw myself as a full-time police officer and a part-time realtor, even though now there's no such thing as a part-time realtor. We don't have a time clock. Mm-hmm. There are some days where I make more money than I did in several months of my previous career, but I only worked like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. There are other days where I'm working 16 hours. So it's not, I'm sure it averages out, but now I would say, instead of part-time realtor, I would say dual career is how I would describe it now, because if you're hustling, it's dual career. You're not doing either one of them part-time. So what happened was, my squad was at lunch one day at the Carrabba's on Tyrone Boulevard, and my phone was just exploding with real estate stuff. And my sergeant at the time looks at me, he's like, it's basically an inconvenience for you to be here at this point. And that, among some other things, really kind of, led to a thought process of, what does it look like if I left this job that would pay me for the rest of my life in perpetuity if I only did, I don't know, it was probably, another 15 years, I would have had a, full retirement. So that was where I was at mentally at the time. And then I don't know what happened. You start thinking like that, and then you start, it's a dangerous thought process, I'll say, if you aren't ready for change. And it just felt like this wind was blowing, and I don't have any control over it. The winds of change. So at a certain point, talked to the wife, and we had a conversation. This doesn't need to be like a fatal mistake. If I do this and I fail, one, we could end up back, in a trailer park, and I could work my way back up. Two, when you leave law enforcement, as long as you leave on good terms, your certification is still good for 4 years. You just need to go back and get hired by a department. You don't have to go to the academy or anything like that. And at the time, I was well regarded, at least I think so. I left on good terms, friendly terms, loved the police department, have lots of great friends there. I was on the promotional list. So I'm pretty sure I could have gotten another job either there or, another local department. So that really wasn't a concern. I actually still think I could. I think my certification's still good till 2021. But once I decided to let go and just kind of allow it to happen, that's when it happened. Mm-hmm. And since, I left, and I don't really want to talk specific numbers, but I'll do a quick calculation here. It was 4 times my police salary the very next year, mm-hmm. from when I was doing real estate part-time to, full-time. Mm-hmm. And then also during that period, I had switched from Coldwell Banker to Keller Williams, and Coldwell Banker is a great company. It's
were you under Hagen Carr over there?
Yeah, Hagen's great.
Yeah,
he was good. Guy. He was one of my initial mentors in real estate, and I consider him a friend. And he was the man of the moment at that time. It was just time. I did my time there, and I learned a lot. But it's kind of like if you, how they say the goldfish will really only be able to expand to the size of its container.
Right.
Well, Coldwell Banker is an old school real estate company that has old school processes and is not as growth oriented as a company like Keller Williams. Keller Williams is a completely different type of company. It's a platform company where it's more about me and my business than it is about their branding. So I'm able to operate my business under their legal authority, and as long as it's legal and ethical, they don't care what I do. So that is what I attribute to a good portion of my success is, one, the early mentorship from someone like Hagen to the, just kind of being ready and willing to, one, leave the police department, and then two, be willing to go to a whole other company.
So it's being decisive and being intentional is what it sounds like. And that goes back to what you were saying about the stoicism part of your military time that you carried with you, is your ability to react quickly and to make a decision that some people may consider rash, but for you, you know it's calculated, and you know you're going to be able to find your way back no matter what the outcome is.
Yeah, and it's, the thing is that none of these decisions are really that big of a deal. You could, even if I didn't go to the police world, I could get a job somewhere else. I am capable of earning money, in lots of different ways, as you guys are too. If we're talking to somebody that is kind of on the cusp, maybe they want to break free and they want to make a name for themselves. They want to put their sign up, so to speak, in the real estate world, but they have one foot in their previous job for a feeling of security. That you really need to ask yourself, is that feeling of security an illusion, or is it real? Because in the police world, we were going through the Ferguson era. 2014 was right before I started studying for the real estate exam in 2015. And between you, me, and everybody watching this podcast, that probably played into it, because I didn't know any dirty cops. I don't think the officer in the Ferguson incident was. But suddenly, me and my friends, who were really doing nothing more than trying to help people and doing our job, people were questioning our intentions. So maybe it was immature naivety before then. Maybe that's always been around. But it just stopped being fun. It stopped being, the parts of it that could be fun stopped being fun. Mm-hmm. And you start asking yourselves, like, these people don't care one way or another whether we're helping them. We're just showing up as a mobile secretary to write a police report, and really there's not much else to it. So once you start to lose, if you're an ideologically driven person like me, there really stopped being a point for me to even go there.
Right.
So, during this Ferguson era, we were one citizen complaint away from being sued. You could get in a justified shooting. Sorry, sometimes the police have to shoot somebody to protect you and themselves. It's totally legal. That's why they have guns. So we could be one even justified shooting away from losing your entire livelihood, not being able to work anymore in your profession, lose the support of your department, which, the St. Pete Police, for all practical purposes, in my case, was always supportive. I never got in a shooting or anything, but I never really, thank goodness, had to be in that position. But, you're one incident away from losing your livelihood in that profession. And then go through to that hypothetical person we're talking about. You're keeping one foot right now in a job that you feel like is secure, except that what if there's an economic downturn? What if, there's what if they want to reduce the number of locations? There's any number of things that can happen. What if they do a personnel realignment where your position is no longer necessary? Well, that position you thought was secure is no longer secure, and it frankly never was. Anytime you're working for someone else, it's never as secure as you think it is.
Right.
You know who has the most secure job?
A bum.
It's any type of business where they have multiple clients. So think about your lawn crew people. You own a lawn service. If you have a bunch of accounts and one cancels, each of those is your employer, your boss. If one of those cancels and you have 100 accounts, that's not that big of a deal.
Right.
If you have one sole source of income and you lose it, even through no fault of your own, you're screwed, right? So who really has the most secure job? And I think that feeling of security is really an illusion that most people have. The second most secure, I guess, would be, in a sense, like real estate is sort of like that too. You should have multiple clients, you should have multiple deals going, so that if any one deal falls apart, it's not really a big deal. But the payouts in real estate are higher than like a landscaping job, so it feels like it's a bigger deal.
Yeah. So well, and it's I think that the realtor, in my opinion, especially being on the title side of things, the realtor is really one of the people that kind of brings everybody together. You know what I mean? And then you guys kind of hand it over to title, and title will, keep the relationship going until it closes. But the real estate agent is a very important part of the transaction. And so I love the knowledge that we're getting today. And so I want to keep moving forward and talk about, so today I put on my Facebook, I've actually started doing something like you. The other day you posted up something that just completely blew my mind, and you put up what is the best high school marching program in Tampa Bay, right? And I was like, why does Ben care what the best high school marching band program is, right? But you had massive amounts of feedback and comments on that. And so I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what, let me see what this is like. So I put up a post that I thought would instantly get people to comment and to respond quickly. And so today I put on, if Hillsborough County opens up today, would you stay home or would you try to go back to normal? And man, the comments were all over the place.
You're a brave man.
Yeah, it's been, but you know what? And somebody else commented on that. They said, good luck, because they thought that it was going to get nasty. But I truly believe everybody deserves the right to have their own opinion. And as long as you're open to hearing other people's opinion, then there's no problem with sharing it. And so please tell me what you think. Would you go back to normal or would you stay at home?
Well, we should preface this since it sort of crosses over into a political arena. I am completely apolitical. I vote for reason and data. So, that is an interesting question. Should it depends on what I'm doing, because am I going to go to a Dave Matthews Band concert at the amphitheater? Probably not. It's probably not a great idea.
Right.
However, it's currently a good time, and it's the right time to have a discussion about risk assessments. Okay. So, I'm in the process of writing an article about this. But I'll kind of go over some of the information that I gleaned in the research for this. So you are 90 times more likely to die in a slip and fall accident than you are to die of the coronavirus as an American citizen. You are, out of every million Americans, 106 of them will die in a car accident, either as a driver or a passenger, and that doesn't include pedestrian related deaths. So, and then somebody asked me, because I am an advocate for reopening Florida in a staged, safe way with appropriate precautions. Initially, I don't advocate for opening places like movie theaters or concert venues or nightclubs. But I am for opening up our economy, because it's time to start thinking about the billions of people in our world right now who are not affected by this virus, and start to work on a more insular way to control the virus, with concentrating on the people that actually do have it and are in higher risk categories. So your risks, you take so many risks every single day. I don't know if it's an evolutionary thing where you somehow convince yourself that it's okay to get in the car and drive to work, or drive to the grocery store, yet you're convinced you're going to contract the coronavirus. Well, you are significantly more likely to be killed in a traffic accident than almost anything else. I mean, vehicles are a death trap. By any measure, and slipping and falling in the shower on your front step, represents so much more risk than any of the coronavirus stuff we're talking about. And being an advocate for opening probably earlier than some people would like to, on a case by case basis, regionally or even by the states. People try and trip you up in an inconsistency, but I don't think it's inconsistent, because what they're asking is, the question you get is, well, what if one of your family members were to die of the coronavirus because you open up the economy too early? Well, I mean, I would do exactly what happened when family members have died before. I would be sad and then go back to work. What is the difference? I mean, why is that a contradiction?
Right.
Why do billions of people in the world right now have to suffer because of some people who are more likely to get this virus, and because of some people who have the virus? And I'm not making light of any of the deaths by any means, but we have to have an honest discussion about context. Because even if the coronavirus did not exist, we would lose a substantial amount of people in this world every single day. So in order to have a real discussion about this, we need to subtract all of those, because those are sort of like a baseline. Then we need to subtract all of these other, causes of death. If we're going to have an honest discussion, we have to start understanding statistics and context, because without the context, it's fear. And people who are afraid should not have the ability to dictate what the rest of us do. It's okay to be afraid, but you also have to have sound leadership, and you have to have people that are able to function in the unknown. So we've tried the stay-at-home route, and a lot of people are suffering. Way more people are suffering as a result of that than the coronavirus. And I, again, am not making light of the coronavirus or anyone who's contracted it. But right now, it's time to be adults and make adult decisions and put people back to work.
Absolutely. I mean, and without weighing one way or the other, I mean, I do fully agree with what you're saying as far as we have to try to find some type of normalcy, whether normal is a new normal, right? Because I think that's what it's going to be. I don't think normal is going to be what normal was prior to COVID-19. I think we're looking at a new normal. I think that things are going to be a little bit more digitally oriented moving forward, because now all of the non-conformists have had to conform. And now the companies who were paying all this overhead costs in brick and mortar, I think may keep a lot of their workers at home because of the cost effectiveness of it. So I do think that there will be a new normal moving forward, but I think we need to find that, because the effects of this closing of the economy is going to be irreversible. If we keep
it's unsustainable, and it's essentially a childish way to handle the problem. We do not have the luxury of sitting at home in a hole waiting to see what happens.
Right.
We just don't.
Yep.
No matter what, we don't. If the death rate was 85%, we still wouldn't have that luxury. We don't.
Yeah.
So it's time to let adults who can understand that, yes, it's both a tragic situation and every one of those deaths is a person and is important, but also people that understand that life is for the living and we need to move forward, and we have to figure out a way to protect us from this ongoing threat moving forward in as normal an economy and as normal lifestyle as possible.
Absolutely.
Amen.
For sure. Yep. That was some juicy nuggets right there that you just gave us, man. So you've been in real estate now. How long? How long have you been an agent?
Oh, about 4 years.
4 years. So I'm sure that you've had, real estate is very much a cyclical game, right? It's up and down, and you've got your highs and your lows. And so, how have you gotten to where you are now? Because you guys are a great team. I mean, people know the Whetstone team. We're super excited to be, teammates with the Whetstone team. How did you get from where you started at Keller Williams to where you are now? What were some of the things that you put into place or that you learned along the way?
Well, the systems and models of Keller Williams, the access to people that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Didn't you guys have Tony Baroni on?
Yes.
So he's a good friend of mine, and he's a good example of that. I don't know that he would consider himself this, but sort of like a mentorship situation there, where if I have questions, he's definitely taken the time to help me out. So sort of the success through others mindset that the company has, ongoing training, but generally it's just decisiveness, because there's a lot of other agents that come to our company that don't unfortunately experience that level of success. So, you do have all that, but it's also just a level of decisiveness. I remember, I don't even think I had left my previous job before, where I'm brand new to this, and I am like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm legally allowed to sell any home in the state of Florida. Nobody's allowed to tell me otherwise. You make that decision, you move forward, you learn. This decisiveness is really, I think, the key. And frankly, what you see with a lot of people, and there are people that are way more successful than me, but what you see when you see that list of like the top agents, what you're seeing is the survivorship bias. People that have survived. I wouldn't be on this podcast if I hadn't survived in some way. You wouldn't have talked to Tony probably, or any of these other people if they hadn't already survived. What you're missing out on is the story about the people that aren't. Mm-hmm. And for every one successful real estate agent, there's probably 10,000 that aren't, unfortunately. Yeah. Wow. And I think it has much less to do with their skills in real estate as it does with their mental resilience and their, at a certain point, if I talked about this with Bill Risser in his podcast. Do you know what the difference between somebody who's unemployed and a real estate agent is?
Their mindset.
MLS dues. Well, it's MLS dues. You're actually worse off as a real estate agent who's not producing than as somebody that's unemployed bringing in no income.
Sure.
So what happens is you get people that really do try, and I'm not knocking that at all, but come to the decision on their own that, hey, this isn't for them. And at a certain point, this is expensive. I know what my team has to spend to generate the money that we generate. And again, there are teams that are spending way more and bring in way more, and it's economies of scale. But at a certain point, you might as well go get another job. It's just economically doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So it's a hard industry. It's a very, very balls to the wall. You can't hide things. Gary Keller says that success leaves clues. I think that Gary Keller likes to keep things positive, but I'm gonna say that failure also leaves clues. There are certain things that people who are not successful are not doing. One, they're not consistent. Mm-hmm. Two, they don't have the mindset of, I absolutely cannot fail, but if I do, it's a period of growth. I can regroup and come back and fight another day. So like when I say, when the wife and I decided, okay, we're going to give this a go. If I fail and we end up in the trailer park, we're going, I'm going to regroup and we're going to work our way back up. And that could still happen. And, hopefully you'll have me on the podcast at that time too. But,
you'll always be welcome on my podcast. I'll do it from your trailer park. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can, basically, I'm going to make it as much like the Trailer Park Boys as I can. Yeah. So,
glasses and all.
The greatest show of this or any generation.
Yeah,
that's so.
So, we can do it from my shed. So, I think that one of the shortcomings of a lot of these real estate based podcasts and training and all that is we are very, very susceptible to falling victim to survivorship bias, and we don't talk about some of the hard things that are in our industry. I mean, if I feel like it's all going to fall apart every day, mm-hmm. every single day. It never goes away. It will never go away. And you just need to learn to live with it. And there's some level of motivation in that. I literally don't take 2 seconds to celebrate a deal closing, getting anything under contract. I mean, you don't have that luxury. You're only as good as your production. And it's called imposter syndrome. It's actually a very common thing.
We've talked about it actually
in people like me. Yeah. So I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I feel like it's going to fall apart at any given moment. And that, to me, that's motivating. It's like working without a net. I cannot fail. If I do fail, it's going to be for a short amount of time, and then I'll be better off in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, sorry, but I think that's the biggest problem for most people is they're too afraid to burn the ship, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they leave that, like you said, second job, that one foot in the door, because it's I think it is more of a mentality thing. It's a safety net, right? It's something for them to go back to if they fail. But they don't give them the option to fail,
right?
Not rather than burning the ship and saying, I have no choice but to make this happen.
Burn the ship, man. So in I don't know if you're familiar with him. Robert Kiyosaki obviously wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, Business in the 21st Century. He's got a couple others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but he speaks about this, right? So that guy's story is pretty incredible too, because he was homeless, living out of his car with his wife, and 5 years later was a millionaire, right? And so it just goes to show that this is possible. That it's not a will thing. I think it's more of a mentality thing, right? I think you have to believe that it is possible and believe that you can do it and believe that failure is okay. Failure is a part of the growth process. If you don't fail, you won't really know how to succeed, right? So, I don't know of anybody who's made it to a top seat who didn't fail their way there, as long as you're failing forward, right? And we actually talked about the imposter syndrome, because I very much felt the same way entering into this industry, right? I came from 8 years Navy, phone sales, car sales, bank sales, boom, thrown in here. And so this is a higher level position than I've ever been in. And so I'm intermingling with people who are making $1 million a year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to bring value to this guy who could buy my whole life? And so I very much felt like an imposter. And I had to talk to Lisa Crown, who was the last guest we had on a show, about that, because I felt like I wasn't good enough to be working with these people who could kind of just write me a check and make me disappear. So I totally get that. I mean, that's real.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
So we've got some fun questions that are coming up, and I'm really excited about these because, so for those of you who don't know Ben, you've got to get on Facebook. You got to go follow this guy. He does poetry readings at night. I think I sat there like mindlessly watching him read out of this book and drink scotch for like.
We've been doing
minutes.
Hemingway.
He just gets on there and he goes Facebook Live and he reads it, and it's surprisingly interesting, because I don't think I would want to read Hemingway any other way now. I think that it has to be the Ben way. So I'm
gonna make you your own personal audiobook.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
It'll be Ben's voice reading you a poem to sleep.
I would put my little AirPods in. And
Unfortunately, it's going to be 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh.
Yeah, that'll give me some dreams there. That'll be good dreams. Yes. I'll appreciate that. Yeah. So let's pull out those questions. I know Riki wrote them down. And so I really like Keller Williams predominantly because of Gary Keller, right? Gary Keller to me he's a visionary. He always has been. He's been very results oriented since he started with him and Jay Papasan, right? And so they wrote the book, The One Thing, which is a really good book. Have you read this book? Have you been to this? It's a great book. It changed my life, got me to where I am today. And so we're going to get to that. But so the first question that we have is...
Yeah, so what's the best book you have read in the last year, and what are you currently reading?
In the last year, let's see. Let me pull up my Kindle, because I'm doing multiples.
Oh, you're one of those guys. You can read a couple books at the same time.
Oh yeah, probably 4 or 5. So I read kind of slow overall, but let me pull up so I can give a correct title. The best book that I read, let's see.
Oh, we really put him on the spot with this one. I like it. Oh, yeah. He's just
read
so many
I want to give you the right
books,
title because it's not a business book.
Oh.
And so let's see. All right, so let me find this here. Okay, it is called Tears in the Darkness. It is a book about the Bataan Death March. And it's really, really good. Great book about mental toughness. Highly recommend it.
What was that again?
Tears in the Darkness.
Tears in the Darkness. It's an older book. So, and if you guys are into like military history at all, great. It goes into a lot of detail about my least favorite military leader of American history, which is General MacArthur, who is actually on my wall over there, I have a reprint, or it's not a reprint. I have an original drawing that was in the Chicago Sun-Times in 1945 on my wall over there. But basically really interesting because I think that MacArthur demonstrated a lot of like poor leadership. And then the people in this book demonstrated a lot of, grit and, fighting through it and resilience and mental toughness. So a lot of the books that I like are related to that. And I feel like I get a lot more out of these kind of books than I do out of your traditional business books in a lot of ways. I feel like I could write a business book that's just as good as a lot of these that we go over in an afternoon. I mean, there's nothing new. They're really structured very easily and super obvious. But like when you're reading about somebody that, his friends are literally dropping like flies as they're walking on this death march. They're drinking putrid water out of a sewer to survive, yet they find the will to go on. That to me is much more interesting and useful information than a lot of these, status quo, business books you read.
Well, you want to talk about some mental toughness or resiliency. I mean, let's hear some of the stories of some of the POWs back in, Vietnam, the Korean War, because some of the things that these guys had to go through, I went through SEER school when I was in the military, and we got to go through about a week of it, right? And just a week was enough for me to have a completely different mindset or perspective as to what these guys truly went through for not only just months, but years. I mean, these guys were years going through something like that, So you want to talk about some true mental toughness? Because I think 99% of most people would actually have cracked during that time, I think it takes a very special character to be able to withstand something like that. So that's
what was the second part of the question?
What are you currently reading?
I'm currently reading Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. Okay. That's a good book.
What's that one about?
It is basically about designing your environment with cues that keep you disciplined, like not relying on your own level of discipline to do or not do things that you don't want to do. So it's pretty interesting. It's good. Wow. So I could go all day with books.
We'll have to. I'm curious to see your reading list. I need some more books to read.
Yeah, maybe we'll put that in the comment. Why don't you send that over to me, some of your reading list, and I'll put it in the comments.
Sure.
All right. And then the second question is, what's your most embarrassing moment as a real estate agent?
Make this good, too.
Honestly, I'm going to tell you a story. I got to be honest with you. I'm not embarrassed, but I'm going to tell you a story about when a normal person would be embarrassed, a normal agent. So I was showing homes to a friend of mine from the police department. She was looking for a home. I think I had already left the police department, but we were looking for a place for her. And we were over in Hawks Point, which is a neighborhood in Ruskin. And we had a showing scheduled. The garage was opened, and it was definitely confirmed. So the orientation of this house was the front door was on the side of it, and you had to like walk up. And I beat on the door like I was still a cop. I always do, and I always announce myself when I come in. So
what does that sound like? Is it an aggressive? Is it like Ben Whetstone?
Well, I'm not gonna like dent the door, but like you're definitely gonna know we're there. So. So we walk in, we're checking out the house. We make it to the back bedroom. We open the door, and there's a naked man standing there. And he is like just standing there, like gesturing, like, what are you doing in here? And I'm like,
who screamed first?
Oh, well, me and the client didn't scream. This was like just any given Tuesday for us.
Yeah.
The guy screamed. But I have a theory. So I have a theory. I don't think there's any way you didn't know we were there. One, the garage was up. The showing was confirmed. We knocked really hard. We announced ourselves. We're loudly talking. I mean, we're talking. We weren't yelling, but we were talking, just like we're talking now, walking through the house, about the house, the neighborhood. We get to this bedroom and we open the door. I I think he arranged this. I think
some voyeur.
Maybe even went back to the original listing itself. Maybe the only way he can get off is by listing his home for sale and having realtors walk in on him.
Oh,
it's a theory. You can't prove it's not true.
Did that house sell?
I know. Did you go over asking price?
Not from us. Not from us. She ended up buying a new build that day. But you can't prove that that's not what happened.
Exactly.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
That's strange.
Oh man, that is funny. I'm
talk about a specific fetish, right?
Yeah, some realtor voyeur. I'm not a hashtag.
Well, now we're going down that.
Yeah,
realm.
I want
this next question is going to be great. So.
Yeah, so obviously,
you guys, hold on. You guys should do a briefing room after dark, where you can like go into these side tangents.
Actually, would it be a bad idea?
Yeah,
do like an open Zoom.
We can pull out the beverages.
Yeah,
and
I'm with it, man.
Hey, we'll have to do that as a bonus episode. How about that? You open for that, Ben? We'll do it as a bonus.
Oh, absolutely.
Episode.
We'll bring
dim the lights.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'll wear something revealing.
We'll set the mood as long as you include like my intro has got to be you reading 50 Shades of Grey to me, and I'm good.
The whole thing. In one sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question though is very good and it's very relevant to what we're going through right now. So one of the things that has happened since this coronavirus period and everybody's been sent home is shows on Netflix that typically would not have ever been anything to anybody have now become viral legends in history. And so obviously the most famous one right now, in my opinion, is Tiger King. So you guys, have you seen Tiger King? Did you?
Of course.
Yeah, I know you did.
Of course.
Because Amy obviously talked about it a lot, and she posted. I love how Amy put on her front door for delivery drivers. She put, "Did Carol Baskins kill her husband? Yes, no, or I don't know." And they put the package in front of the sign on her door. But so
I could see Amy being a Carol Baskin, and if circumstances were just a little bit different in her life.
I won't.
She's
said that.
She's she'll hear this. She's our admin. She'll love it.
She's awesome.
She'll love it.
Yeah, she's really cool. So if you could pick one, if you had to be quarantined with one character from Tiger King, who would it be?
Oh man. Let me think for a second. Not Joe Exotic, because he has a habit of turning otherwise straight men into his husband. I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's just not.
But you'll get a cool.
It's not really
out
my plan.
Cool
So not him.
And lose half your teeth.
I mean, he's apparently very, very convincing. Very convincing.
It's his music.
When he gets out, I'm going to ask if he'd be interested in a career in real estate.
Yeah.
You could sell
we could use someone as persuasive as you on our team, Joe.
Right.
So I would say. I think that the most interesting person, I don't know his name. He was the documentary maker. He seemed like he was just like up for whatever. He seemed like he's been through some interesting situations. He feels like I feel like we could keep a conversation going on for a long time.
Really?
You know, always have something to talk about.
The guy who wrote Tiger King?
The guy with the weird crocodile.
With the hat, who was always drinking the coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't see that one.
probably
Me neither.
him.
I picked the guy from Myrtle Beach. I think he's got the best compound out of everybody. It looks.
I would agree with that. He was a little creepy to me.
Very creepy.
Is that the?
I'm only going. So one, I don't want to end up as somebody's husband. Two, I don't want to end up in a cult. I'm really just going. I'm looking like when it ends, I just want to be able to like shake hands and leave. I don't want to have like all this extra baggage. Okay, so that's kind of my criteria for opening. For answering the question.
That is.
I don't want anybody to set me up in a murder for hire scheme. Lots can go wrong. Everyone in that show was terrible in their own way. Every single person.
It just blew my mind that they all found each other.
Yeah.
It's like birds of a feather flock together. It's just the truth. All those wackadoodles just came together.
What was it? Jim Rohn said you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Mm-hmm. It's true. Tiger King and in business and in life.
That's when what's the guy's name that came over and just completely took everything from Joe and just.
Oh, Jeff. Oh, Jeff. I didn't like Jeff at all.
Yeah.
Jeff Lowe, yeah.
That guy just came out of nowhere and just took over everything. Yeah. I mean, I was a little mind blown.
I still want to know what that one guy with the lemur and the long hair. I still want to know what he actually sells. Oh, you know, talk about it because they always show the building it says he's a business owner or a sales
Oh yeah,
business
it's
guy.
always said business owner.
Yes.
What was in that?
The one that
what was
stole
in
the
that
Hummer.
shop with the lean? Yeah, exactly. Like, who was that guy?
Was it lawn equipment?
Where did you come from? Yeah. All right, so our last question. Let's get off of this because we could stay on this all day.
Okay, so yeah, the last question is, what's the one thing our listeners can do today to increase their business in the next 90 days?
And our listeners, just so you know, are going to be real estate related sales associates, whether it's realtors, lenders, title, whatever.
I think there's two things predominantly that come to mind. I know you said one, but they go together. One is know your numbers, know your market, be ready to answer questions and help people get over their short-term concerns. Know your market and how it's performing. And then two, talk to people. The number of people you talk to every day is directly correlated to your earnings in this profession. Have conversations. They call it being a secret agent. You cannot be a secret agent and be successful. You can't. People need to know what you offer. People need to know your value proposition. The more people you talk to, the more real estate you will sell.
Ooh,
Perfect.
Yeah, that was good. Perfect. So if you're listening today, he's absolutely right. I mean, it's just a numbers game, and the only way to play the numbers game is to know the numbers. So, those two things absolutely go hand in hand. You have to know how to get yourself, you have to know where you want to get to, and then figure out how to get yourself there. And when it comes to real estate, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on, you're right. The amount of people you talk to is the amount of deals you're going to contract. So very good stuff, Ben. We're pushing our hour, and I super appreciate your time and you being on here. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get to see the little wiener dogs running around in the background. I figured they'd make an
That's for after dark.
So we'll have you on our late night episode, and we'll have some fun with that.
That's gonna get weird.
Yeah, hey, let's get weird, man. I'm in. We just got to figure out who else we can bring in. I'll have to get to thinking on that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us, Ben. And
Ben, real quick, where can people find you?
Oh yeah,
social
please.
media.
The easiest way is just facebook.com/Ben Whetstone, BenWhetstone, and request my friendship. I'm always willing to add more friends unless you're weird.
And then you're definitely willing.
Yes. And I'm going to add you to my private group.
Ben's Weirdos. I like it.
Yeah. That sounds like a cult.
Yes.
That's why he doesn't.
So, I mean, I know we're getting off of here in a second. I just want to reiterate, we all care deeply about people affected by the coronavirus. I know it sounds like, we're full tilt here wanting people to get back out there and start the economy again. That's done with the most pure intentions possible. We're not making light of anybody that is suffering, but we also need to have an honest conversation and get people back to work, because that's a whole different type of suffering. We are all in this together, and we will be stronger afterward. So let's figure this out. I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
I agree.
For sure. Let's figure this out. I think that's going to be the best title for this episode. I think that's what I'm going to name it. Let's figure this out together.
All right.
So thank you so much, Ben. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And
after hours.
For all of our listeners, please subscribe, click below, follow Ben Whetstone, follow us. We're just bringing you knowledge. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks, Ben.